All right, so today we're going to do something kind of fun. We're hopping in a time machine, right? Back to 1909, Chicago. And, you mentioned how cities deal with growing pains and Chicago, well, they had a plan for that, a big one, the Burnham Plan. We're diving into the original excerpt straight from 1909, just for you.
Yeah, and I think you'll find this wasn't just adding sidewalks or train tracks. Even in these excerpts, you see Burnham and his team, they're driven by this philosophy, almost like shaping an experience, not just a city.
Right, like designing a movie set, but people actually had to live there. And speaking of experience, that phrase, it pops up all over the plan, herbs and hordo, city in a garden, really sets the scene, doesn't it?
More than a slogan, though. This idea, it was the seed for some major decisions. Think sprawling parks, grand boulevards. They even use landfill to extend the lakefront, all driven by that city in a garden ethos.
Which is interesting because they contrast it, right? In the plan, they talk about London, how it just sprawled every which way, almost ignoring its waterfront. Burnham, he wanted Chicago to have this deliberate connection to nature, not just exist around it.
And that speaks to this whole idea of collaboration, which you'll find fascinating. Burnham really emphasizes that, not just between architects, but city departments, railroads. He even saw, everyday citizens as caretakers of public spaces.
He wanted everyone to buy in, have ownership. It's funny, the plan actually mentions the 1893 World's Fair. Like, it's proof, hey, we crushed that massive project. We can do this too.
Exactly. It wasn't just an event. It was like this cultural touchstone. Proved that the city could unite around a common goal. They're trying to recapture that energy.
Makes sense. Now, I know you're interested in how cities tackle challenges. The transportation part of this plan, it's going to be right up your alley.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredibly thorough. Beyond the "we need more trains" talk, Burnham mapped out freight loops. Keep those goods moving, right? Underground tunnels, bypass congestion. He even proposed using trolleys for nighttime produce deliveries.
Wait, nighttime deliveries? Back in 1909, just to keep things smooth during the day. That's surprisingly forward thinking.
It is, and it's fascinating how Burnham ties it back to quality of life. It wasn't just about efficiency, it was about reducing noise, separating commercial and residential zones strategically. He even suggested landscape railway approaches.
Landscape railways, what was that about?
Combating, as he called it, urban fatigue. He recognized, even back then, being surrounded by bare concrete and noise all day, not good for the soul.
Urban fatigue, they were dealing with that back then. Puts our modern-day doom scrolling into perspective. But yeah, I get it. A little greenery goes a long way. So he wanted to weave nature throughout the city, make it accessible.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Those parks he's talking about. Not just randomly placed. They were positioned so they could be easily reached by those grand boulevards he planned. Beauty and recreation, accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy.
Which, of course, increases property values in those areas. Burnham understood economics, that's for sure. But it's the bigger vision, right? A city designed for people. That's what makes it compelling. He was thinking a century ahead.
Exactly. And even further ahead than that with his outer park belt idea. Preserving natural areas, imagine this, up to 60 miles outside the city, ensuring people could escape. Most people in 1909, they probably thought the city would never stop growing.
It's incredible. That foresight. Most cities today are playing catch-up, trying to curb sprawl. Okay, my mind is officially blown, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, that foresight, it's what makes the Burnham Plan so relevant even now, It's like he just understood the challenges of the future, like peering into a crystal ball, almost.
Right, and he wasn't just throwing out ideas. He was thinking about how to actually make it work. Like that Congress Street axis he proposed. That was a bold move.
Oh, absolutely. Transforming Congress Street into this grand east-west boulevard, connecting, the heart of the city all the way to Grant Park. It was huge. Demolition, foresight, coordination. I mean, most cities weren't even attempting that back then.
It's like he was thinking bigger, not just buildings or streets, but this whole unified experience. Almost theatrical in a way.
Exactly. And it's not just about aesthetics either. Burnham, he knew how important clear, efficient routes were. In the plan, he talks about how Congress Street, along with Halsted, would form this central crossing point, right? This vital intersection for, the flow of the city, goods and people.
It's like he was designing the city's circulatory system, making sure everything flowed smoothly. And the challenges back then, right? Horse-drawn carriages, early automobiles. Planning for that kind of traffic, that must have been mind-boggling.
Oh, for sure. But the thing is, so many of the issues Burnham had to deal with, they're still relevant now. Urban sprawl, traffic, balancing beauty with, actually working. These are things cities everywhere are still grappling with.
Makes you wonder, what would Burnham think of our cities today? Would he be impressed or, see us making the same mistakes all over again?
It's a fascinating question. But one thing's for sure. The Burnham Plan, it's more than just a historical document. It reminds us that the choices we make now, they'll shape the cities of tomorrow.
And not just the layout, right? I keep thinking about that story of the abandoned dome. That, to me, speaks volumes about the collaborative spirit Burnham fostered.
Absolutely. An architect right in the middle of this high-pressure design meeting for the World's Fair, and he's willing to, set aside his own grand vision, all for the sake of a cohesive design. Says a lot.
It's like this microcosm of the whole Burnham Plan, right?
Yeah.
Putting the collective good above ego. Realizing that sometimes the best solutions, they come from collaboration, from compromise.
Exactly. And you see that same spirit in even the way Burnham approached those small details. Like the yacht harbors, for instance, along the lakefront.
Yacht harbors. Okay, I'll be honest, I kind of glossed over that part.
It's more than just a recreational thing. The plan emphasizes that these harbors, they'd offer protection from the lake's weather. You know how unpredictable Lake Michigan can be? Protecting boats, ensuring safety.
So even those seemingly small details, they were driven by this understanding of the city's relationship with the lake. It's like every part of the plan was carefully considered. Nothing was just thrown in there.
You got it. Burnham, he wasn't just thinking about making Chicago bigger or grander. He was thinking about making it better, more livable for everyone. That's a legacy that, it still resonates.
It's true. It's about people, ultimately, how we want to live together. I'm telling you, this whole deep dive, it's really made me appreciate the thought and care that goes into shaping a city. And those decisions, they have consequences for generations.
Absolutely. And there's still so much more to uncover in this plan,
I know, right? Feels like we've only scratched the surface. It's amazing how even the tiniest things connect back to Burnham's big picture.
Yeah, and those little things, they often show how sophisticated their thinking was, Remember Urbs in Horto, their motto, city in a garden. That wasn't just a nice phrase for them, it was a guiding principle. Even influenced the less, shall we say, glamorous parts of planning a city.
Like what? You're going to have to explain that one.
Think about it. Waste disposal. Huge challenge, right? But they saw an opportunity. They needed to get rid of tons of landfill, so they used it to expand the lakefront, created those iconic parks and boulevards we're always talking about.
They turned trash into treasure, literally. It just goes to show their thinking was so interconnected. Transportation, parks, garbage, it all played a part.
Yeah.
Healthier, more beautiful city.
Exactly. And speaking of beauty, they didn't just stop at the parks and boulevards. They cared about the streets, too. Wanted buildings to, live together in harmony, as they put it. Not clash, not compete for attention.
Each street like its own little composition, part of the bigger symphony. Any examples in the plan? Did they mention anything specific?
They actually mentioned the Place Vendôme in Paris, that unified architectural style. They got it. How architecture can shape how you feel, awe. Intimacy, it all depends.
That's cool. It reminds me, they talk about using trees too, right? Clipped trees along certain boulevards to sort of match the buildings. It's the little things.
Totally. Not just the big picture, but how people actually experience the city, on a human scale. And remember how they wanted to create spaces just for pedestrians, light vehicles, away from all the commercial traffic.
Right. Like that grand promenade they imagined for Michigan Avenue. We take it for granted now, but back then, creating a place to stroll, to be social, to escape the chaos, that was forward thinking.
Absolutely. Urban oases, you might call them. Places to breathe right in the city. And it all comes back to that Urbs in Horto idea. They knew a truly great city, it's not just concrete and steel, it's that balance. Built environment, natural world, living together.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. Burnham and his team, they were dealing with things we still deal with today. And their solutions, still inspiring us over a century later.
It makes you appreciate that power, right, of a bold vision and planning for the long term. Not just today's needs, but the legacy, what we leave behind for everyone else.
So what does this all mean for our listener? They're fascinated by cities, how they evolve. What's the takeaway from this deep dive into the Burnham Plan?
I think it's a call to action, honestly. Look around your own city. See those echoes of the past, those big ideas that shaped everything. Ask yourself, what are we building now? What will they inherit from us?
What kind of city do we want? And how can we, like those Chicagoans back in 1909, actually make it happen? It's a good question, isn't it? And the Burnham plan, even after all these years, it still inspires us to ask it.
It really does. And on that note, we'll leave you to explore your own urban landscape. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.